Better World Blueprint. Good humans doing good things.
Sometimes it's easy to look around and feel overwhelmed by everything that's going wrong. And yet, there are so many people working quietly to set things right. They show us that hope isn't wishful thinking, it's action. And this podcast is where you'll meet them. I'm Siobhan Hunt. Welcome to A Better World Blueprint. We all know the news cycle tends to focus on the negative, the dramatic, the sensational, and far less on the stories that lift us up. But there is one corner of the media landscape that, I'd argue, is designed to make our lives better, and that is local radio. I've seen it firsthand, having worked on and off at ABC Local Radio for many years. The people who show up in those newsrooms and studios every day are deeply committed to serving their communities, keeping listeners informed about what directly affects their lives, giving them a platform, and connecting them in ways no other medium quite manages. And few people embodied that spirit more than Simon Marnie. Over his 25 plus years on air, most memorably as the voice of weekends, Simon brought people together across Sydney and New South Wales. Simon Marnie, welcome to A Better World Blueprint.
What a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
My pleasure. Now, Sydney is a city, obviously, but what I saw you doing was almost like, it's not a nice analogy, but it's almost like you're a spider in this web, like a beautiful spider. And you were kind of weaving this thing that connected people within the city. Like it almost felt to me as an outsider looking in that you were helping to reestablish this sense of community. And I'm wondering if that metaphor resonates with you at all.
I'm glad you noticed that, because I think very much what we tried to do with Weekends was to create a very diverse community that had differences but respected each other's individual, not talents, but just personalities and assets, I guess, if you want to use that term. And so to know that somebody observed those people join together, and when you did outside broadcast, you saw incredibly different people from incredibly different walks of life sitting next to each other, talking together, and that made me realise what the strength of radio is.
So let's go back to the beginning. What you're talking about there is something you did every weekend for a long, long time. But what initially led you to radio and to presenting in particular?
I could get $26 a fortnight more than the dole. No, it's true. I was doing an acting course and working as a blue kangaroo for a radio station as their mascot.
A blue kangaroo?
A blue kangaroo for 2UW, which was very well paid. But I saw an ad in the acting school for the inaugural Afters radio course, which is very different then to what it is today. And I knew from friends at Afters and that's the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, that they paid you a living wage so you could concentrate on learning. And I also knew that living wage was $36 a fortnight more than the dole, which might not sound that much, but $36 in those days was literally 2 weeks' rent. So it was a significant amount of money. I applied. The general manager of 2UW was a referee. He also happened to be chairman of FARB. So through very corrupt means, I got into a course that didn't really occur to me as something I wanted to do. I wasn't one of those kids that sat in their room talking into a hairbrush, so I feel like a bit of a fraud.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, because you seem to me to be the embodiment of what local radio is meant to be about as a presenter, especially. So I'm wondering if that's how you came to it. Was there a moment where it all kind of clicked into place that this was something you wanted to do?
Certainly not at film school. And then even after film school, the two options I had for work, one was in Albany, Western Australia, and the other was in Mount Isa. both for commercial radio. So I got an introduction to Marius Webb at Triple J, and I did about 18 months of free work for them just to get in there, and then over the next 2 years increased casual work. And I don't think there's ever been a moment where I've known that radio is the thing I want to do. I've known the tricks and I've known why I enjoy it, but I still never, as I said, I was never that kid with the hairbrush pretending to be a radio announcer. I totally accidentally got into it.
What about that idea of connecting people and that idea of community? Because I'm so curious to know where that came from, because I don't think people actually understand just how important local radio can be to creating that, and how rare it is that you do get those different voices on, that people feel seen and heard and feel like they have a place on a media platform, right? Where else does that happen? And you just did it so seamlessly. I'm just wondering how that came to be, because you could very easily get onto a mic and just talk, make jokes, interview people without making that kind of conscious connection. Yeah.
Look, I grew up in a family that was very socially aware, even though we were probably middle class. A father who really just cared about looking after people as a doctor, and a mother who was involved in various community groups, often to the detriment of her family. So she was a leader in disabled rights. She set up the second women's shelter in New South Wales. She was always there for the community. She was a local government, a deputy mayor. And I think I was just always impressed upon the importance of community and also people outside your normal group. And so when it comes to radio, you've got this entree to people's lounge rooms, to be able to insert yourself into a very personal space and demand attention and get that attention, and then also create interaction, is an enormous privilege. And so, yeah, radio just was the medium that allowed me to do that. I wasn't necessarily busting a gut to do radio. Sorry. I feel like a fraud.
You're not a fraud. I think the interesting thing about what you're saying for me is, this podcast is really about, for me, it's about exploring how people make the world a better place. It doesn't matter if they're not, inspired in one moment to say, this is the difference I'm going to make. The importance for me is that something happens that allows them to make the world a better place. So even if you weren't consciously thinking, I'm going to be a radio presenter and make a community on the airwaves, you did it. And that's what's interesting to me about what drives people in whatever space they're in to make the world better. And I've often said it could be something as small as just smiling at someone in the street. I don't think people appreciate just the small ways we can make it this crazy, crazy world at this point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you had any moments where the work itself was challenging, because it is media. Media can be very fickle. Were there moments along that pathway that were hard or challenging? And if so, what happened and what did you do?
Gee, how long does this podcast go for? There were many moments of disappointment, frustration, exasperation. I think it was about 2.5 years at Triple J, getting absolutely no money or very little before I got full-time work there. Then I got frustrated with Triple J and went to Queensland to work on an ABC station up there, and that didn't work out. It was a really negative experience. Joe Bielka-Peterson's Queensland was a very horrible place to live, and I still get shivers when I go to Brisbane nowadays. Came back to Sydney with no work and worked in a coffee shop, got back into Triple J. So all the way through, frustrations right up until, 18 months ago when I walked into a meeting about renewing my I didn't have a contract, renewing the program, and to be told that they weren't going to do it for no apparent reason. I think the road is paved with incredibly negative experiences, but it's how you approach them. And I'm not a person where the glass is half full. The glass is overflowing and creating great liquid refreshment for not just me, but everybody else in the room.
Yeah, I definitely got that sense. And while I think it's probably part of the picture as well, is I remember meeting you for the first time when I was, I think it was the first time I was working at local radio, and I bumped into you in the lift, and you didn't know me from a bar of soap, and you still were very kind and approachable. And I've noticed that you treat everyone equally, whether it's the people you work with or the community on air. And I feel like that's also a really important ingredient of just making life better for everyone. And it's not always the case with presenters that they are that way. Is that, again, something that you would credit to your parents, or was it part of the experience of moving through media and seeing how people were treated that made you that way?
I think it was becoming a producer first. So always, whether it was Triple J, I became a producer and then got on air, local radio, a producer and then got on air. And I saw how presenters and guests can treat people working on the program who get no credit. You know, the producer is the silent person behind it. And I really, when I was a producer, that was golden. I wasn't the person to be featured. But I can tell you that there are some people who wondered why they never came on the weekend show in the 25 years I was doing it, or didn't come on again on the weekend show, and it's because they treated the producers like shit. And if you do that, you don't get back on the show. It is part of the program that everybody enjoys doing it. You can be stressed, but if you're rude to anybody, you don't deserve to blip on my radar, and that extends from the security guards on the front desk to the people that might be vacuuming the lift when they get in, to the producer that says, "Hi, would you like a glass of water?" If you don't treat them with respect, you don't rate in my world.
That makes a big difference. I loved working on weekends, Simon. And I think that
everybody should. I mean, Sundays was very different. When we were in Ultimo, Sundays I would stop at a Chinese bakery on the way into work, and everybody would have, a bit like Norman Gunston, if some people would remember who he is. You always could choose from the hot bar. So always there was a tray of Chinese pastries for the producers, the cleaners, the security, and the guests, and of course me as well. But, it wasn't a radio show. It was just to come round to my place and let's hang together.
Yes, which is what it was lovely for everyone and created a real sense for people, I think, of safety as well.
Yeah.
So local radio in particular serves the community in, say, emergencies when there are natural disasters, whether it's fire, floods, those sorts of things. They can be really trying moments. And it's very apparent in those moments the role that local radio plays. Was there a moment when you realised that it extended beyond that? Like you said, it was a privilege to come into people's living rooms, but the presence of your voice on the weekends was obviously a huge comfort to many, many people. Was there a moment when you realised that that was happening?
I'll break it down to 2 points. One, I realised how important local radio was in emergencies way back in, I think it was the 2009 or 2010, very early bushfires, and it was pre the technology we have now. And somebody from the Rural Fire Service rang up and said, "Can you keep doing what you're doing, because we're finding out about fires before they blip on our radar." And I realised how important it was, not just for the listener, but also for the first responders and emergency services. And nothing became more important to me than realising that responsibility. And I think what brought it home was when I did 15 hours on the night of September 11, when you saw all the other media fall over. So the planes flew into the building at 11:30 Australian time. We went full coverage at 11:45. The first thing to go down was the internet because it got choked by demand. The second thing to go down was television because it just got dominated by CNN. Even the ABC took that feed without collating it. And then the third thing to go down was the telephone system. And I was filling in for Tony Delroy. He had a very loyal listener in the Geelong Telstra Exchange who played the quiz with another loyal listener in the Houston AT&T telephone exchange, so they had a line open, and we would have joined every other media organisation in losing our contact with America if those two people for 15 hours hadn't kept that line alive and placed calls into Washington, into New York and into the various areas. And so those two moments made me realise how important radio is during emergencies, but also that there were people, particularly in September 11, also with the bushfires, who were tuning in for the first time, who A, might not know what's happening, or B, might not know the extent of what's happening. And if you're the first person to deliver that news, you have to do it in a very calm, a very reassuring, a very authoritative way and without sensation. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that the sensationalist approach to authority makes it more legitimate, but actually it just scares people.
Where do you put the Simon Marnie in that space? Like, you're a human responding in real time as well, both to, I guess, the shock of things as they're happening, but also that awareness of your responsibility to the audience. I mean, how do you manage that as a presenter?
Look, I think it's really important to understand that the Simon Marnie that's a radio broadcaster is not the Simon Marnie that hangs around the house, goes down the South Coast, is with friends and family. I don't think you have to be authentically who you are on air. I started off life as a magician and was a very successful kids magician. And I would say that I am using a lot of the magic craft skills to do radio, and part of that is having a personality that's not fake, but it's not me. So, you don't fall for the ego or the disaster that you're trying to cover.
Okay, so I'm wondering if the work that you've done over all that time has changed you.
Definitely, and for the better. And also it's broadened not just my perceptions of humankind, but it's given me the opportunity to travel to remote places, to meet fascinating people and to understand them. It's allowed me to put myself into situations that not many people will get access to be invited, not just through radio, but when you visit a town, into someone's home to sit down at their family table and have dinner. That is an incredible privilege, and that's what this job has facilitated.
We often talk about in media, one of the key ingredients for a good journalist or presenter or whoever it is curiosity. It strikes me that you must have that curiosity in abundance, but perhaps the magic is that the openness that you were raised with in terms of acceptance. Like, the combination of those two things almost seems like your superpower, that you are curious about people, but you're also open to their differences. Does that ring true at all?
Yeah. I mean, if differences are extreme or extremely against my belief, I will probably not be open to them. But I do like people that have, opposite views to me, because I find you can learn from that. What was the question again?
Well, I think it's more that for me, it's not even, I know there's a lot of discussion at the moment about being open to opposing views, but I kind of think that's almost a little bit boring. What I see in the work that you've done and the person you are is more an openness to people who are different from you, not necessarily in opinion, but in background. And that's what I think we kind of lack today, is that we can meet someone who's different from us, whether they're from another country or another part of the country itself, of Australia, or even another suburb. And we think they're so different from us that people don't know how to connect anymore. And that's what I see from you, is an openness to accept people in all the many ways that they come to you. And that's when I...
And that comes back to your question about curiosity. And yes, I am curious about nearly everything except tea. Tea is the sweat of Satan.
That's good. That's really good. Okay, look, my next question is whether or not you've seen the impact of your work. But before you answer that, I actually have my own example that I wanted to share with you, because after you left local radio, I was brought on to produce the next program, which meant I was always on the phones on the weekends and having to field the endless calls of people asking where you were. But I remember someone calling in, and I don't remember the exact details. You'll have to excuse my perimenopausal brain. But he basically, the outline was he was a farmer who had been through a tough time at some point, probably because of drought or floods, something like that. And it had nothing to do with the program. He said that somehow you found out he was going through a rough time and you connected him to, I think it was a restaurant that allowed him to continue business. And it basically allowed him to get out of this hole. And the reason that story stuck with me, even though I don't remember his names or the exact specifics, is that this was something that you did that had nothing to do with creating content, having a story. It wasn't something you had to do for your show. It was something you did just to help someone out. And that, to me, pretty much is what led me to want you to come on this show, is that I could see not only the work you did on air, that was part of your job, but you did so well, but you also, it seems to me, created real life change outside of the program. And I'm wondering if you're aware of other stories like that.
When put on the spot, no. And in about 40 minutes, I'll start to think of at least half a dozen. But as you were saying that, it really reminded me of great advice or observations from Mark Colvin, the journalist who presented PM. And he showed me this interview with the then head of the BBC, Dame, can't remember her name. But she pointed out that in the BBC, and I extrapolated this across to the ABC, presenters are public servants. And that it means that you are in the service of the public. You are not paid just to do the time on air. You are paid to do everything, paid by the organisation to do everything that serves the public in the best and most fulsome way you can. So that means that you MC apple judging competitions in Batlow. It means that you take the time to talk to the audience about things that are not necessarily show content related, because that's what you're there for. You're there to serve the public. And that has been one of the really strong tenets of the whole reason I do this. Moments where I realised that, I think it was all bookended really nicely at Government House when we did the final broadcast, and I would say over 1,000 people turned up, all who had a reason to make that journey. And it could have just been I introduced them to food in Cabramatta, or it might have been that I changed the life of their child for a better direction. There were many stories like that, and probably when we finish this chat, I will delight in remembering more of them.
Well, if you do, can you start writing them down? You can maybe write a book and everyone can enjoy the fruits of your labour. Look, I'd be remiss not to ask you what's next for Simon Marnie, because I know that people still want to hear your voice. They miss you on air, but, you know, there are other ways that I know you're getting out and about amongst the community. What are you planning, or are you able to say what you're planning?
The other reason I'm not able to say what I'm planning is because I don't know. I think to realise from getting a magic kit as a 9-year-old and turning that into a career as a magician that I retired from at 17, earning more than my school principal, to then going to acting school because I just happened to have enough money as a magician to pay for that, then fluking my way into film school, fluking my way into Triple J. Nothing has ever happened out of contrivance or planning. And so I'm just sitting here waiting to see what accidental adventure will happen next. I'm not sitting on my hands. I'm taking tours overseas. I'm working with the Royal Agricultural Society, pursuing agricultural excellence. I'll be doing a whole lot of stuff with a major Sydney festival shortly. So I'm busy, but I'm just busy doing bits until I know what I want to do for a living, which I haven't ever worked out up until this stage.
Maybe you could be a gentleman of leisure.
No, that would kill me. Well, it would kill me and it would kill my partner.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for your time today, Simon.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Siobhan.
Former ABC radio presenter Simon Marnie. And if you know of someone who's making the world a better place, even in less than expected ways, tell me about them. You'll find my email in the episode notes. I'm Siobhan Hunt. Until next time, take care.